this month's episode of the Good Boy Podcast. I am your host, Ilya Alexiev, and on the Good Boy Podcast, we talk about good boys and good girls, and by that I mean dogs, and we tell fun, funny, sad stories, give memories, all that kind of stuff, celebrating dogs and just hopefully the joy, but what they bring to our lives. Today I am joined with a good friend of mine, Max. What's up, Max?
Hello. Great to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
You're definitely one of the longest listeners. But I'm here today to talk about your dog, Hamilton.
Yeah.
And, I goofed. I should have said talk about Hamilton, and then everyone would be confused.
They'd be like,
Hamilton?
Is this a musical podcast?
So before we talk about Hamilton, I just wanted to ask you, you had a dog growing up, correct?
Two, actually, yeah.
Two
dogs, cats. We had a hamster. We were like an animal house for sure.
Cool. Okay, because like one thing that I always want to try to do is kind of contextualize like what kind of like dog experience, and even if it's just like whatever you're a kid,
yeah.
I think having a dog as a kid is way different than having one for the first time as an adult. And that's the situation you're in
totally
with Hamilton. So I guess before we start talking about Hamilton in great detail, I wanted to ask you about Dingo.
Oh, Dingo, special guest Dingo that we had. Oh, yeah.
So Dingo was a dog that you and your now fiance took care of, and you just were taking care of him for a friend, right?
Yeah, just for a week for our friends as they were looking for houses in Pennsylvania.
And other than obviously just helping a friend out, was that something you were kind of like, you guys were talking about, like wanting a dog?
I'd been pushing for a dog like pretty much since we moved in together. So we were like together for like a year and then got a place, and I was like, great, our own place, that means our own dog. And Ronit, my fiance, she never was really on the dog train. And big dogs especially like frighten her quite a bit. So we never were like, it was always a maybe thing. And then these friends of ours we're like, we need someone to watch Dingo, who's a little guy. I'm not exactly sure what kind of dog, but he's quite small and kind of looks like those, like, what are those, Cavalier with the like long flowy ears, and like Lady from Lady and the Tramp a little bit.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me in a weird way of kind of like a little fox.
He definitely, because he was kind of long and red. He's got like red and white a little bit, or like a kind of lighter brown, I guess.
Yeah. So, how long were you living together before you started taking care of Dingo?
Before we took care of Dingo, it was about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, or coming up to 2 years at that point. So this is like 2 years of me every few months sending her a picture of a dog that's up for adoption.
Oh, wow.
I was pushing always. I was like, this is how we do this. And then, like, because we knew Dingo whenever we would go over to their house or what have you. So Dingo was always a very cool, small dog. And then we had the opportunity to take care of Dingo for 10 days. And gave us a test also of like, how can we interact with a dog? How does a dog interact in our house? How can we like work our life schedule around a dog? Like, is that something we can even really handle? And it went super fantastic.
And you guys have probably, everyone's busy, but you guys have a slightly different scenario than most couples, is that you guys act.
Yeah, so we kind of have two jobs.
Yeah,
each.
So I'm sure that was always, I don't know how much you factored into like getting a dog, whether you were thinking, oh, it's okay, we'll figure it out. And Ronit was kind of like, well, we have this other thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of what put us off for a while was that we were like, we need a drastic lifestyle shift, at least for a couple months, because if we do get a dog, it'd be really unfair to like bring this dog home and be like, okay, great, you're alone for 9 hours a day now, bye. It's like we needed time, a block of time where we would be able to really acclimate this dog and spend a lot of time with this dog. So by the time that we did need to leave it alone every now and then, it would trust that we were around and helpful, you know? And with Dingo, that week that we had Dingo actually aligned perfectly with a week that I was not in any shows or rehearsals. So I was able to come home immediately, and it just like it was the perfect week to take care of Dingo.
Was she apprehensive about taking care of Dingo?
Not really. I think because she really likes Dingo. And Dingo's, again, is small, so like nothing really scary about Dingo. Something about big dogs, and big dogs also seem to know that she doesn't want to interact with them because they'll like immediately be like, hello, my new friend, and like she's little, so they tend to like knock her over.
So this goes into my disclaimer that I do not claim to be a dog expert at all, but I'm pretty sure dogs can smell fear.
There's something about like
and obviously like even if they're just being friendly,
yeah,
and that's still like intimidating.
I think outside the
creature,
I think outside the wild, it's like there's some sort of instinctual element of like I can sense that this person is afraid of me. In the wild, that can be used as like, haha, now I'm the dominant species. But like in a domestic setting, then it's like, oh no, I need to show that person that I'm not scary.
Oh yeah,
let's be friends. And then of course they, you know, some dogs tend to overdo it. We have friends who have a huge golden retriever that looks like a wolf, from Game of Thrones. Like it's massive.
Yeah.
And it like tends to just jump on her when it's up on its hind legs, it's taller than she is. So a small dog that she knew, and Dingo also happens to be just like really chill and cool and like very, very sociable. All of those things kind of meshed. When we were actually starting to look for dogs seriously, Ronit had said like, but what if our dog is not as cool as Dingo? You know, like, so Dingo was like set at this very high standard of dog.
So everything went well with Dingo, right?
Yeah, it was like perfect.
Were you kind of like saying like, hey, like after you returned Dingo, like, hey, that went pretty well? Were you kind of, I imagine you weren't like super overbearing about it, but it seemed like you'd kind of like drop some seeds, right? It
definitely helped. Yeah, it definitely helped. Whenever the conversation would come up again, it could go a little further rather than just like, ha ha ha, thanks for sending me a picture of that dog.
Yeah.
Then it was like I would send a picture of a dog that was for adoption, and the response would be like, well, not now because we have this show, and this show lined up for the next 3 months. But maybe when things slow down, you know, like the conversation started to actually manifest more, you know, which was really, really great.
So, before we actually get right into Hamilton, how long after you took care of Dingo did you get Hamilton? Because that was fairly recently.
Yeah, Hamilton we got on.
Like,
oh boy,
like less than a year, right?
That we had Hamilton.
Sorry. From Dingo to
Hamilton was actually almost exactly. Like maybe it was like a year and a month.
Okay.
Because we took care of Hamilton while our friends were checking out houses in Pennsylvania. Then they moved about a month later, and we got Hamilton almost a year to the day that we went to Pennsylvania to visit them.
Oh, okay.
And then came back from Pennsylvania and picked up Hamilton that night. So it was about a little over a year from Dingo to Hamilton.
Okay. And so, do you want to go into how you got Hamilton, or do you want to just
So like
when you were sending, were you like fairly actively like checking different humane societies or adoption places like
all the time? I was like hounding these things. We had agreed pretty early on, like if we were to get a dog, one, the size was a huge thing; it had to be small. And then because of our lifestyle, there would not be a lot of time for extended training. So like getting a puppy was not going to really suffice. So we started to seriously talk about senior dogs, and I found out about a company in San Francisco called Muttville. I don't know if you know about them.
I've heard of them.
So they are literally just a senior dog facility. That's their whole thing.
speaking of senior dogs, here
Senior
comes
dog,
Mr.
special
Dewey.
guest.
Actually, his birthday is coming up in a couple days.
Woo!
Dewey will be turning 13.
Wow. For real.
Yeah,
How old's Mike?
9. So, right, if you think a weird way to think about it is, you remember us getting Dewey.
Oh, yeah.
Mikey's the same age now as Dewey was when we got him.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, very cool. But.
Yeah. So if you hear excessive breathing, that is Mr. Dewey, and you can't hear it, but we see it. Is Mikey is currently on my bed chewing a tennis ball. So there's
definitely
the
his
scene
MO.
for you. So
I found out about this
Muttville,
Muttville,
yeah.
which they're a super cool organization. It's like just for dogs like 8 and up. That, you know, if their owners have passed away, or if people are like, now this dog has medical issues and I just can't take care of them or whatever, they take care. They got tons of dogs in there, and they host like adoption events all the time, and you can come meet all these dogs. So I would occasionally send a listing from Muttville over to her, and say, check this one out, or this one out, or this one out, like probably every 2 months or so. And then what really changed when I noticed was that she sent me a listing of an old dog.
Oh.
And I was like, hey now, this is coming. And I had a 2-month break coming up from shows, so like that would have timed out well. And we had moved into a larger place that had like a proper backyard and all sorts of stuff. So a few things were kind of coming together, and then she sent me this dog named Darwin. And we were like, oh, this might be happening. So then we reached out to the team about Darwin, and they were like, oh, yeah, you can come meet him tomorrow. He just got out of surgery for his hips, and he's on this pill, this pill, this pill, and he's got a bipolar problem, and he's 14.
Ooh.
And we were like, hold on, would you recommend Darwin for like first-time dog owners, essentially?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, absolutely not. No.
I mean, I guess as a little quick side tangent is that's like an interesting thing, right? Is someone who, I mean, you guys weren't looking for the senior dogs, but just someone who adopts senior dogs, because that's a tough thing, because you build an emotional relationship with your dog.
Totally.
And so getting to have to, even though you probably won't know them for maybe years, but building an emotional bond with an animal and then constantly going to having them die is probably very tough.
Yeah.
So, obviously it's not good for first-time dog owners, but that's even just like, that's a commendable thing for anyone to do.
We were actually, when we adopted Hamilton, we were surprised at how many people, like when we took him to the vet for the first time, and when we would tell people like, oh, we got this dog, he's 8.5, whatever, we were surprised at how often people were like, oh, thank you for getting a senior dog. And like that was the thing that we were like, it's actually easier for us. You know, we don't have to train this dog. He's already chilled out. Like, it's actually way easier for us. But I guess it's a rarer situation, which I was not aware of. So it's cool. And it's cool that an organization like Muttville exists.
Yeah,
to just that's what they focus on.
It's so easy to be like, I want a dog and I want this perfect golden retriever puppy, and it's going to be the best. And that's so easy to want, right?
Yeah, and you know,
and you guys were in a good spot though, because you, like, for different circumstances, your options were limited to what you're looking for. So
exactly.
It's like, even if you found the perfectly sized puppy, it's like, oh, well, we can't have a puppy because we don't have enough time to train him and all this kind of stuff. And so I feel like that helped you guys in a lot of ways.
It really helped narrow things down. And then we had 3 dogs to look at, basically, when we were like, let's seriously look. So there was a dog named Meredith from Muttville. And she was like, I think she was like part Shiba Inu. She was like, had that very straight but pointy hair.
Yeah.
And there was another dog from Muttville named Mochi. And so we go to this adoption event, and Mochi's not there, but Meredith is. And Meredith like had just gotten out of surgery. She had gotten spayed. And so we go and meet her, and like she immediately like I sat down next to her, and she immediately like cuddled with me. And then when we were like, all right, we're going to go see other dogs. Bye, Meredith. She just like rolled over on her back and was like, no, you're not. You got to pet my belly still. And so like we were almost set on Meredith that day. And they told us, they were like, by the way, Meredith's eyes aren't so good. So what you're going to have to do is every morning and every night, you're going to have to rub ointment on her eyeball.
Ooh.
And both of us were like, all right. And that's kind of how we knew, like, yeah, we do want to do this. Because they gave us kind of a challenge. They gave us a big challenge with Meredith, and we both were like, yeah, that's something we'll do. We want this dog bad enough. So it was a good indication that we were like absolutely ready to do this thing. The thing that I didn't know about adopting dogs is that holds don't really happen. I tend to prepare for things.
Ooh,
so I was like, I got to make sure the house is ready for a dog and all this stuff. And so we were like, let's go. Let's pick a dog, go home, make the house ready, and then pick up this dog next week. And they were like, no, we don't hold dogs. And that was not something I had ever considered.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about that real quick right now is obviously it makes sense, but could you imagine there's probably a ton of people who be like, yeah, I'll get that dog, and then they put a hold on it, and then they never show up.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's so messed up.
Oh, and I bet I totally get it. Like I was like, oh,
it
makes perfect sense. It's just something I had never
but
considered.
It's like that again goes into like your lack of experience and like
Totally. Because every time, I mean, so the first dog I had growing up was like there before I was born.
Yeah.
But then the second one was like we went to the Humane Society and then picked the dog and took the dog home that night. It was just not something I had considered as an adult that like we just did that all in one day, you know?
Yeah.
Because as a kid, you're just so excited. So it was like a lack of understanding how this operates. I was like, oh my gosh. So we basically went like, well, in a week when we are actually ready, if Meredith is still there, we will pick up Meredith. And there was another couple there that was looking at dogs, and they had seen Meredith just before us. And then like they didn't follow us around while we were at the adoption event, but we saw them a few more times, and they kept going like, do you know who you're picking yet? And we were like, no. What about you? And they were like, yeah, I think we're pretty close. And I'd be like, get away from me.
What's the purpose of that? That really irritates me.
It was bothersome. It was really bothersome.
Like, I don't know. Maybe this is just my personality, but like if I'm going like in a public space, I don't want like people like, even if it's a fair or whatever, I don't want to keep having this weird small talk like over and over again. It's one thing to say hi or like, oh, you again, you know, and joke or make a lame joke about that.
Like even if it was lower stakes, it would bother me. Like if at the grocery store someone was like, hey, did you find the pickles? I'd be like, leave me alone.
Exactly. Like
like I don't. It lower stakes, it would still bother me. So we were like, ugh.
Like how old were they?
They were middle aged.
Middle aged.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is all they got.
That's it. They were like,
sorry to be mean to
I think they went to the adoption event for a dog and maybe for some friends. I don't know. But we checked the next morning
on the site,
and Meredith is off the site. So I mean, we don't know if that family got her, but in any case, we were like, bummer for us. Great thing for her. She's going to a happy home. Like in the end, that's the whole point of Muttville. So like, great job, but bummer for us. Meanwhile, dog number 3 was Hamilton.
Ooh. Sorry,
yeah.
Completely interrupt you. But before I forget, I just wanted to tell you that I don't think you know this, but when we were getting Mikey, and I don't remember. I apologize if I told this on the Mikey episode. But when we had gotten Mikey, my mom and Dima had gone to the Humane Society to look at dogs before, and they had found, I think it was a female black lab named like Cassie or something like that, and they were thinking about that dog, and they didn't get her. And then when we got Mikey, we went back to the Humane Society with the whole family. Like a couple days later, she was gone.
Whoa!
And so that led us to Mikey. So it's just kind of like that. If you want to call it fate or
there's
whatever.
something there. There's totally some kind of providence. Yeah. I remember when we got my dog Rocky. I was in 4th grade, and I remember we went and we all fell in love with this boxer, and I cannot remember her name, but we went up to the counter to be like, we are adopting her. And the lady behind the counter was like, oh, she's really not good with kids.
Oh, yeah.
And then we were like, oh, gosh. And then we were like, okay, next choice. Rocky.
Yeah.
And he ended up being an absolute delight. So really, there's always some kind of pet guiding feature.
Yeah. So this third dog was
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yeah, and so the Hamilton was actually with the Humane Society in Milpitas, so not Muttville.
Okay.
He had come back to the shelter, so he had gotten adopted, and so when we said like, oh, this is so Darwin was with the Humane Society as well. Darwin was not with Muttville. Darwin was, and when we said, is this good for a first-time dog owner? And they said no. The lady actually said, hey, pretty soon a dog came back to us. He's 8.5, and he's actually going to probably be pretty good for first-time dog owners. So check the website, see what you think, and then give me a call if you want to meet this guy. And that happened to be Hamilton. So he had gotten adopted, and then like 3 months later, the family that got him brought him back, and he was like 4 pounds underweight. He was like way desocialized.
And 4 pounds underweight
for a little guy.
For a little guy,
yeah, because he's part Chihuahua and part Corgi, we think, because he's long. And we were like, oh, maybe part Chihuahua, part Dachshund, but his butt is super fluffy. It sometimes looks like he's wearing like parachute pants.
And his ears point up.
Super big pointy ears.
Yeah.
So we think it's a Corgi what makes him so long. But yeah, so he's a little guy. Like 12 pounds is like a healthy weight for him. So like down to 8.5, 9 is a rough spot to be in. And like he was way desocialized. So what we found out was that like this family that adopted him, when they would leave for the day, they would just like lock him in the bathroom. And then when they would get home and go to bed, they would put him in his crate. And so he was, and this is a guy who's used to, for the most part, just like living in the house.
So they had recently adopted, like he was somewhere else before they got him?
So he was with a foster family that was through the Humane Society.
Okay.
Got adopted. 3 months later came back. And that was when we got him.
Okay. And so the house you're talking about
was like the foster family's house.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
the
yeah.
bathroom people
were the ones who adopted him and then returned him. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they returned him, and they returned him with like, it's so silly. Like when we adopted Hamilton, they gave us this bag that was like, this is all the stuff that the other family bought for him and is not going to use anymore. And it was like bright pink water bowls, like hot pink stuff all over the place. And we were like, I don't have anything against pink, but like clearly what you had adopted, what you'd wanted to adopt was like an accessory. Like you didn't want an animal, you didn't want a you wanted a cute small accessory that you thought would make
like you think of your Legally Blonde kind of.
Yeah, I think it was just like I don't think they were malicious people. I don't think they were like
or
dog
like
abusers.
Paris Hilton,
yeah, I just think
thing,
that they wanted something cutesy, but like didn't consider that like animals have personalities and like
you have to take care of
and
it.
you have to take care of it. Yeah. So he comes back to the shelter, and then we go see him, and like the picture they took of him for their website also was like unreal. He had like a big smile on. His ears were like in full flight mode, like this dude, or like all range mode in Starbucks.
Yeah,
they were
all
like
range
wide
mode.
open. And so we were like, this guy's got unreal charm. He's amazing. So we go to meet him, and we meet him with the foster family that had been taking care of him. And he like immediately jumps onto my lap, and he like starts licking me all over. And we were like, this is definitely going to be it.
And so he was underweight then, right?
He had gained back like 2 of his pounds. So he was like
Okay.
10 and a half, where healthy for him is like 11 and a half, 12.
Do you know how long he had been with the Humane Society after being returned?
Only about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah, only about 2 weeks. And so he was with a foster family, got adopted. When he came back, they gave him back to the foster family because it was like this foster family knows him.
Okay.
And he went back. They have 2 dogs of their own and grandkids. And they were like, the difference now is that he's not so good with the grandkids anymore, and he's kind of just okay with these dogs, whereas he used to be friends with everybody.
And he had known them, yeah.
Yeah, so he came back like super desocialized.
And you're totally leading towards this, but just the psychological, I guess, torment or environment of being in a bathroom
for 8-9 hours a day.
I mean, like, and this is where it's like sometimes frustrating because, like we mentioned, like with a puppy, you want it, but not everyone realizes that it's like a living thing and that you need to be taken care of properly.
Yeah.
I mean, they may think, oh, he has space to move around or he'll just sleep in there. But, I mean, he would go in there and bark and then kind of cower and then be scared.
Well, and when we leave the house now, for probably a couple minutes, he'll howl a little bit just because we're not there. And then he calms down. We have a little camera. We keep an eye on him. And he calms down and he sleeps all day. But he has the whole house. But he does, like, howl for a minute or two. And I can only imagine in a bathroom, that's also going to reverberate and hurt your ears. And he is hard of hearing. So we think that maybe his time in the bathroom set him up for that.
Oh, so maybe he
barked himself out,
unintentionally made his hearing worse. And he's got, like, you'll see in the picture I put for, like, the episode, is he's got, like, almost cartoonish size ears.
It's like a bat.
For his body. Yeah, it's like a bat. It's like, yeah, so for his size. So, yeah, I can only imagine. And they're probably, like I said, he has space, but it's, like, just something that I've, like, observed with just having dogs is sometimes we need to put the dogs in a room because whatever, there's some workers coming in or whatever, we need them out of the room, and we have a room that kind of like can split the house into the TV room, to the backyard and the garage where their water and food is, and that door being closed is like very significant to them, and both ways. Sometimes they're locked in that room, sometimes they're locked out of that room, and it's like this huge like psychological barrier.
Totally.
Like freedom. Like I don't have the option to go there, and it's like those are where the people are, and I want to go to the people, and so yeah. I mean, I don't even
now, like if we are like cleaning the bedroom, so he'll have the entire house except the bedroom. But because we're in the bedroom, that's the only place he wants to be.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like you have so much space, but he will sit by the door. And it's a connection, I think, that he missed.
Yeah, I mean, like, dogs are pack animals and they like being with people. So it makes sense, and it's sad like that he didn't have that. And so that's man, it's just tough.
It's a bummer.
And
every time we tell somebody like, "Oh, he got adopted before us and they brought him back," everyone's like, why did anyone give him back? Because he's super chilled out. He's like very okay with everybody. He naps a lot, or he just like hangs out with you. He does not bark very often, except like when he sees other dogs. So he's like a pretty quiet, mellow dog, and everyone's like, why on earth would anyone give him back? And it's like, I think they just were like, oops, having a dog is a responsibility. I didn't realize that.
I mean, I'm trying to think of like a good analogy for like choosing the right dog, and the thing that kind of comes into my mind is like if you're someone who buys the wrong car. So maybe you buy a car that you realistically can't afford, like, or
it's not practical,
or it's like, I don't know, you get this like humongous truck and you live in this small residential streets, or you buy a car that's like some sports car that's way too fast, and then it's like maybe you mess it up or something happens, and it's like it's a hard thing to return. And dogs you can return, but it's like what happens to them, and I'm sure you'll go into that of how Hamilton's behavior was when you first got him.
One thing that I just want to say about the Silicon Valley Humane Society and their foster family that we dealt with was that, again, like this whole idea of holds and no holds on dogs. So we went and adopted Hamilton because the only way we were able to get Hamilton was because the foster family was like, sure, we'll keep him for a few extra days so you can get the house ready. They were like, we just want to make sure he does end up at a good house. You guys seem pretty cool, so we'll actually hold him. But like the Humane Society wouldn't hold him, and again, like no one holds dogs. So it was actually like the cooperation of the Humane Society and the foster family. Without that, we would not have gotten the dude, which is awesome.
Yeah, and so do you remember how frequently you were looking at like the sites for dogs, like every day or every once a week?
I was probably looking like once a week.
Because my mom,
and then probably once a month, one would really stand out to me.
Because my mom, she hasn't been doing it recently, but even after we got Dewey, she would like constantly look. And like one thing that you would notice is like, you know, not to sound too, I don't know, I don't want to sound really bad, but a lot of the quote unquote good dogs get adopted quickly, you know, like the young lab puppy or the young German Shepherd get adopted quickly. So it's kind of like this dog who's been sitting here. It's like, well, what's wrong with him?
Yeah, you really do start to go like, oh, I wonder why no one's picking this dog up. And it could be any number of things.
Yeah.
And especially in our area, and the more south you go, like we were in, you know, Milpitas, San Jose area looking for dogs too. And it's like the majority of that landscape is Chihuahuas.
Yeah, it's Chihuahuas. That
just is the nature of the the dog demographic is like primarily Chihuahuas and Chihuahua mixes, which will typically go on the website as terrier mixes because they don't want. Because there's so many Chihuahuas that they wanna entice you by saying something else. Then you get there and you're like, oh yeah, the guy's kind of got big eyes, maybe, you know. Just from observing my mom looking at these dogs, even before we got Dewey, we would kind of look, like the Milpitas one, and then sorry if you don't know Bay Area geography if you're listening to this, but basically around San Jose, and then the Peninsula one, which is basically the one between San Francisco and San Jose. Maybe I'm missing one. It's just past Burlingame, isn't it?
Yeah, it's in
yeah.
And then they have San Francisco, and then we noticed that kind of like there are a lot more variety and kind of interesting dogs, like up in Marin, which is north of San Francisco, and there are some kind of more. It's not, for anyone who doesn't know, it's not 100% like strictly city. Like there are some areas that are kind of more country, and there are farms there and more open areas. So there was like all sorts of dogs.
Yeah.
And we went there to look. So yeah, like you feel bad just in general because there's so many Chihuahuas
and again people don't tend to, which we didn't know at the time, but people don't tend to adopt older dogs for the reasons you're saying. You know, you only have a limited amount of time with them. If they do have bad habits, they're probably not going to break them.
Yeah.
Depending on your perspective, they're not as cute as puppies, you know?
Yeah.
We think Hamilton's the cutest, but it's really funny because like I grew up, both dogs that I had growing up were big.
Yeah.
And so I was never on the small dog train. And then similarly, I was always on like the anti-Chihuahua train because like every Chihuahua I'd ever encountered was mean and loud and like not fun.
Yeah.
And then now that I have this dog who has essentially a Chihuahua's head, like there's nothing really corgi about his head, but he's got this Chihuahua head. I'm like, Chihuahuas are pretty cute. Like I've totally shifted my perspective on Chihuahuas just by owning one.
I mean, real quick. Do you think the Beverly Hills Chihuahua movies, do you think those worsened or increased like people's positive? Did they negatively or positively affect people's views of Chihuahuas?
I can only imagine they're more annoying.
I think they're kind of made it at least slightly more negative to me. I mean, we had a good thing going with the Taco Bell, Yokio.
Right? Yeah.
I think that was a good one.
Great Chihuahua.
But I don't necessarily. Yeah, I don't know if I don't know anything about those movies. I think there's 3. I haven't seen them. I don't know.
Oh, I thought there were still.
I think there's 3.
Oh my gosh! In every talking dog movie, though, also the Chihuahua is always like high pitched and like, "Hey, what's everybody doing?" Like they design the Chihuahua really to not be the cool dog.
Do you know Keith David?
Oh yeah.
He should voice a Chihuahua.
He should voice a Chihuahua.
Just to kind of break the barrier.
Just like the Arbiter. He should voice a Chihuahua.
Just on a side note, Keith, if I ever do some like movie or TV show, I want Keith David in it. Like,
oh, yeah.
So I'm going to lean towards those probably had a more negative.
Probably more negative impact.
But I don't know. Like, I literally don't know anything about those movies. Like, I don't know if they tried to have like a positive spin about adopting dogs or anything.
No idea.
I have no idea. But you
yeah.
so you are telling the story of a dog who broke the
I'm totally pro
the
Chihuahua now.
generalizations.
Yeah.
Who broke a lot of the stereotypes about that. So I guess do you want to just briefly physically describe Hamilton?
Yeah.
You've done it a little bit, but
So yeah, he's part Chihuahua and we think part Corgi. So he's like a long guy with a fluffy butt and a Chihuahua's head, essentially. So if you can imagine a Corgi with a long tail and a Chihuahua's head, like that's pretty much what his situation is. He's slender. We've had a lot of people tell me that he looks like a baby deer.
yeah. So I was thinking about that because I saw your
Which I've
posted
started. I've started definitely
on
adopting.
Instagram.
Yeah.
So you basically did a side by side comparison of a baby fawn curled up, and you took a picture of Hamilton,
and then Hamilton doing
and
the
he
same.
is. You keep saying Corgi, but he is like tan, like a
Yeah,
Chihuahua.
yeah. He's
not
definitely
like,
he's a light.
like
He's
orange.
exactly. He's like a light.
Or
He's like a light brown, and now that he's 8.5, so he's got some white on across his back and then across his mouth as well.
And as we mentioned, he has big floppy ears,
Super floppy.
kind
ears.
of like the German Shepherd, like up ears.
Yeah, because they're like
Yeah.
very sharp triangles too. I mean,
Again, sorry if anyone listening knows the correct terminology,
for what that is, yeah, I have no.
but for everyone else, that's the ones they are. And so, I guess, do you want to like go into how his behavior and kind of he was once you guys brought him in?
Yeah, so the drive home, first of all, he was like super shaky. So one of the things also that we were looking at was because of Ronit's allergies, we were looking at a dog that doesn't shed too much. Like kind of all dogs shed to some extent, or they have dander. But there are some that shed a lot less than others. And so we were looking at a dog that does not shed a lot. And for the most part, he does not. However, when he's really stressed, he shakes it right off. And so this drive home, he's sitting on Ronit's lap, and we're like, yay, we got a dog, finally. First drive home. And she's just covered in hair. And she's like, oh, no.
And I think we might have glossed this over. He was great with everything. Like, he liked you guys when you met him.
When we first met him, he liked us a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he was really excited to jump in the car with us and stuff like that.
Okay, so you're like, cool, everything's going great.
Everything's going great.
He starts shaking,
And then he starts shaking.
and shedding.
And it was like we were driving home at night. And he also, like, he's not blind or anything, but his eyesight, like, one eye is quite cloudy. And the other one is not so much. So, like, his eyesight's going a little bit. His hearing's going a little bit. It's dark in a new car with new people. So he started to get a little nervous and shaking. So he started shedding, like, all over the place. So it was, like, first indication of, this might be – we're in for a little bit of a different adventure than we expected. And we brought him home, and he immediately started, like, running around the house and exploring and enjoying himself. Like, he was just, like, sniffing things and having a good time. And we had friends who were really excited that we had – finally got a dog. So people had bought us, we had 3 bark boxes waiting for us from that service, BarkBox, where they send you like a month. Every month they send you like some treats and some toys and things like that. So we had 3 of those. So upon arrival, this dude had 12 toys and like 12 different kinds of treats and things like that. Most of which he still does not play with. He's not a toy guy. But we at first thought, he's not used to these things. It's overstimulation. But yeah, so he explored the house, and we had taken the whole next day off work and everything to make sure that we could spend the whole day with him and kind of walk him around town and get him.
And when you walked in the front door, was he like just sniffing around? Like,
yeah, he just started sniffing around.
Comparable to like you taking a dog on a walk?
For the most part, yeah. He just started sniffing around. And just kind of exploring every nook and cranny of the house and kind of seeing where he could go. He didn't really jump on any furniture yet because I don't think he was comfortable with it or anything, but he was sniffing around a lot and just kind of exploring. And he had already eaten that day, so it wasn't like he was looking for food or anything, but he was just kind of getting acclimated to the place. And then we go, okay, it's pretty late, so we're going to bed. And part of the package that we got when we adopted him was a bed as well, and the bed was just kind of a standard dog bed, so we were like, oh yeah, we could totally use that. Then we also got his crate, and we were like, we're shoving this in the garage far away so he never has to see it again.
Was he in the crate in the car?
No.
Okay.
No. The Humane Society requires you to do so while you are fostering a dog. So, like, the foster family brought him in a crate, but then we, like, just took him and we're like, no crates for you, hopefully, for the rest of your life, dude, because, like, your crate experience is bad. When he came back to the Humane Society, they told us that he had chipped a tooth because he was trying to get out of his crate.
Oh, okay.
So, like, crates, we, like, tucked that thing away
just
forever.
a little teaser for, I guess this will be posted after it, but just to let you know, is Aaron, his dog he has like a medium-sized dog. Crazy stories about, and she was pretty young, trying to get out of crate.
Oh boy!
So
see, and I grew up. My Rocky, the dog we had, primarily for most of my life growing up, he loved his crate. This dude would run into into his kennel every time he had the chance. And when he was like, for probably 5 years, he would sleep in his kennel. And we were like, it's been 5 years, dude. We're gonna leave the kennel door open for the night. And he could not understand what was going on. He freaked out. He was like, can you close this? I'm not safe in here to sleep. It was so funny. That
just reminds me of like a cartoon, like a Looney Tunes or something, where it's like an animal like unzips their coat or something. Like they make some sort of joke with that, but it's like it's not zipped, and he's like,
what am I supposed to do? Yeah, what am I supposed to do with this? Yeah, so he loved his crate. So then it's like we hear about this dog that's like, I want to sleep on your bed, essentially. And what we found out from the foster family is that he typically sleeps. He would sleep like on their pillow with like in their face, and we were like, that's not going to be what we're about, especially with Ronit with her allergies. So we were like, we'll put his bed next to our bed, and he'll go, oh, that's my bed, I'll sleep in it. And he did not. He was not. He was like, your bed is my bed. I don't care where you put my bed.
And do you know if he used this bed at the Humane Society?
I don't know.
Because that could be one thing,
He's just not
like,
used to
Because he's like, that's not mine.
What is that thing?
Like, I can throw, like, the other day, I just threw a blanket down, and he was lying on it.
Whatever,
But he knows the place. Like, I don't know if, like...
Well, what we ended up doing was putting his bed on our bed at the foot, and he sleeps there now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he kind of got that. It's kind of the compromise.
He kind of learned.
A little bit of a compromise.
This is a Hamilton space.
So he'll end up going to his bed for the most part. He really likes cuddling, so he'll every now and then try and sneakily crawl up to us while we're sleeping, and then wake us up because he's not so subtle. And then we're like, get back to your bed, and then he'll crawl over to his bed. But that was like the first night was just kind of figuring out where does he sleep, and he was like, where am I supposed to sleep? So the bed at the foot of the bed was kind of a pretty good compromise for him to kind of understand how the space worked.
Okay. How was his... So he was kind of being... I don't know. I don't want to say cautious, but exploratory.
Yeah, exploratory. And for the most part, pretty mellow. I mean, the next day, he started jumping up on the couch. And, like, he understood where his food was going to be and, like, things like that. So he adapted really quick. The one thing that he had trouble with was that he did not know how to tell us that he had to go outside to pee. Yeah. Because I guess at his foster family, they had a doggy door.
Okay, and you guys just have a sliding door.
We just got a sliding door to the backyard. And he did not know how to tell us. And we got him on a Monday. For the whole week, he would only pee when we would take him out to go walking. And we were like, I guess he's able to wait. And then on Friday night, that first week, in the middle of the night, he jumps off the bed, and we're like, oh, what's he doing? And then we just hear, in the dark, we just hear him peeing on the floor. And then we're like, oh! And so I scoop him up, and I take him outside, and he pees for like a minute straight.
Wow.
I guess he had been holding it.
Yeah.
And, like, letting out little bits around town to mark his territory, but, like, to actually properly pee just to relieve himself, I guess he'd been holding it for, like, a whole week.
Yeah.
And then the next day, he did it again in the morning. And so we had, and then nothing for the whole next week. And then week 2, pretty much the same thing. Saturday morning, he peed on the floor. So he was really having trouble telling us that he had to go outside. So what we started doing was, like, every 2 hours, we would just open the back door and, like, tell him to go outside. And sometimes he wouldn't have to pee, but sometimes he would. So then, like, after week 3, he jumped off the bed, went to the door, and then came back to us and, like, nudged us and then went back to the door. And we're like, oh, cool, he figured it out. So he did eventually learn how to do it.
So he's not really a barker, right?
No. On walks, He is.
He'll bark at other dogs.
He'll bark at other dogs. He has no sense of patterns at all. Sometimes he will bark at people. Sometimes he is cool with people.
Okay.
There's no real pattern to what dogs. 100% of the time he will bark. But people, it's odd. We don't know what his
He
what
hasn't
his
barked
thing is.
at like the door to go outside.
No.
And
When we bring guests over, he doesn't bark. Like I feel like he has this sense of like, if you're in the house, you're supposed to be here. So I'm not going to bark at you.
Yeah. Well, what Mike does is if he hears you outside, he'll bark ferociously sometimes, but he'll just bark. But then once you're inside, he's like, "Oh, like you're part of the crew.
You're supposed to be here."
Yeah. Like he'll even like sometimes I'll come home late and I'll hear barking. I'll be like, "Mike," sort of like it's me. Like just don't wake everyone up.
Yeah.
So, do you tell him like a command to go outside, or do you just kind of walk outside? Or
we typically, if we open the door, he knows what's up.
Okay.
But he reacts to just saying "pee," and he'll kind of figure that out. We've found with his hearing issues that like if you got hard consonants or any kind of plosive word, that's the part that he can hear. So "pee," you got a sharp sound. But like his name doesn't really have any of those, so he doesn't actually react to his name very well. Like Hamilton, the "t," but it's like so late in the game of that word that he doesn't really get it. But if you just go "come here," he does.
So, because come here.
Yeah. So like other
Come here,
commands. So like we taught him. We found that the couple of words that he reacts to pretty frequently are both Hebrew words because there's some really hard consonants. And so like the word for like essentially like watch me or pay attention is takshiv. So you got a t, you got a k, you got a v. You got a lot of, so he'll immediately turn when you say that. And then mespich, which has a lot of like p and k, that means, essentially it means like enough. So when he starts to bark at somebody, if you give him a strong enough mespich, he'll be like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to do that. So we had to teach him Hebrew.
So you just kind of say, come here, like...
Yeah, or you can clap.
Okay.
Or pounding on the floor really helps. That's the thing is, what I've found, like if he's at one end of the hall and I pound on the floor on the other end of the hall, he'll feel it and totally know what's going on.
Okay. He's like a mole.
He's like a mole.
Because like, I think like, a lot, like I think one reason why you have a lot of the like dogs that are like Lucky and Buddy is you kind of have, like you said, the hard sound and then like an E sound.
Yeah.
It's like usually two syllables. So Mikey, Dewey. Like Mikey knows Mike. Like he learned that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a hard sound. Yeah, so sometimes it's weird, like...
Because he doesn't hear, like...
another language, like...
For whatever reason...
Yeah,
because of the way that the words are built. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, 4th of July, everyone was like, well, how's he going to be with fireworks? And we're like, we don't know. And, like, someone set off something that rumbled our house. Like, it was so close and loud. And all he did was kind of sit up and look around and then went back to sleep. Like, a firework did not affect him whatsoever because it's just kind of a low rumble to him. Yeah.
So how is he... So, does it seem like, though, he's, like, pretty... When he hears it, that he's, like, fairly obedient?
Yeah. So, like, the takshiv word that we use, he'll immediately look at us, which was the point. Where, like, if he sees something, like a dog or, like, something else, and we want him to not interact with it, we got to give him a word to look at us. And we just kind of trained him with every time we said takshiv, and he would look, we would give him a treat. So now he looks and he's like, "Where's my treat?"
Oh, okay.
Because he definitely likes treats. He's a food motivated guy.
Yeah. I think it's funny. Like Mike is smart enough where like if someone like especially if someone's in the kitchen because kitchen implies food, that if he hears someone called Dewey, he'll come.
Oh.
Because he's like, oh, what's Dewey getting? Because, dogs are always like, you gotta spread the love.
Yeah.
You gotta give it. If I'm here, you gotta give it to me.
The Foster family told us that Hamilton, for a while, was eating the other dog's food as well.
Yeah. So real quick, we think Mike. We took Mike to the vet, and he was told he had to lose some weight. And we're like, how? He's a very active dog, and we realized that Dewey doesn't finish his breakfast, and he would come swoop it up every day.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
Yeah,
Sneaky guy.
Enjoy your diet, Mike. But yeah, the same thing too is like sometimes we have 2 cats, so sometimes we'll be giving treats to 4 animals, and some animals, Dewey, are more uncontrollable than others. So he'll be offering his paws to shake, and he'll be like falling on a cat who's trying to eat his treats. It's a mess.
Yeah, he's just like, what do I have to do to get this food from you?
But so he's Hamilton's having these pee things, but you kind of work through them.
Yeah, for the most part, he adapted really fast. We read when we first, like the little packet that the Humane Society gives you, one of the things they suggested when you first adopt a dog was like establish a small area of the house that's just theirs and make it like a fun, cool space, like play with them a little bit. But then when you leave, like find a way to gate it. So we bought some baby gates, and we basically went like the kitchen can be his, and it's tile, so if he does pee, it's easy to clean up, and it's also pretty big, so he doesn't feel so confined, and he can see through the gates, so that's cool. So it's like a little more comfortable. So we set up baby gates. These things are 3 feet high, and he is a Chihuahua with stumpy corgi legs.
Yeah.
And we were like, let's test him out. So we basically set up the baby gates, and we take a walk around the block, and when we come home, this dude is at the front door.
Oh.
He jumped the gates. 3 feet high, this dude jumped the gates.
Yeah.
And so we were like, well, I guess.
How long is this after you had him?
This was like day one.
Okay.
We were like,
okay.
and so we established like, hey, your food is here. There's toys in here. Hey, let's play around in the kitchen a little bit. And then, so he was like, oh, the kitchen's fun. And then we barred it off so he wouldn't worry, right? And he was cool. And the second we left, probably he jumped.
So,
actually, it was the second so we tried 2 baby gates. There were short ones, and we left the house to test it. And then Ronit was like, oh, I forgot my phone. So we turned back around, immediately walked in, and he was at the door. And we were like, well, that clearly didn't work. So then we used the taller ones, and that's when he still jumped over him. But we were like, he's long and small, so like it can't be pretty when he jumps over it. Like there's no way he's clearing it. So it's probably pretty ugly. He's probably going to hurt himself if we let this happen, or he's going to get a foot caught in the chain. Well, not chain, but it's like whatever the mesh is.
Yeah.
If he's going to get a foot caught, and if we're gone at work, and he's going to be dangling upside down for an hour, like it just. So we were like, we're going to have to take a risk and give him the whole house. If he pees, and we're just going to have to deal with that. But what we found is that when we're not home, he doesn't really drink water. He just lays down. He has his spot on the couch, and he just sleeps all day. So then he doesn't really have to pee.
Yeah, I feel like I noticed that too. Is when a dog is kind of comfortable, when you're gone, they typically just sleep.
They just shut
and
down.
I think
yeah,
that's sometimes, and not always, and depending on the age of the dog, but like Dewey can be really annoying and like hyperactive, even for being an old dog. And you're like, how can he do that? Well, it's like he's literally sleeping all day, waiting for you, and then you're home, and then he's expelling all his energy.
We got a little camera when we first got him, because we were like, if he's gonna have the whole house, we just want to make sure he's not getting himself in trouble, getting caught under something. I mean, we cleared out all of our we tucked our electrical wires, and we moved the furniture in such a way that he wouldn't hurt himself, and like all sorts of stuff. And we put on the camera, and the first thing we see is him sleeping literally next to the front door. Like, just on the ground, like, not on the couch or anything fun.
Yeah, so you can be anywhere you want.
And we were like, this is the saddest thing I've ever... It was so heartbreaking. We're like, he just wants us to come home. So I actually had to stop watching the camera.
So... was this like a Wolf of Wall Street, like teddy bear?
Or is it like a little? I'm
joking, but it's just like a little baby monitor. Basically,
it kind of looks like Eve from WALL-E. It's like this little white robot.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was like $40, and the app is free, and you can actually move the camera.
I'm curious. Is it like specifically intended for a dog?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know.
I was just curious.
Yeah, yeah. But it was really. I mean, Ronit still stays on it. But like I was just so empathetic to Hamilton every time I turned it on that I was like, this is not healthy for me to watch anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Dewey's the same way, where he'll plop in front of the front door, and what's funny is since he's a little older and his hearing is not quite as sharp, is sometimes like you'll open the door and he'll still be kind of sleeping, and you kind of have to like push it a little bit to kind of like wake him up. It's
That's
not like
hilarious.
you open the door, like you unlock the door, or whatever, and he's like straight away up. But he does the same thing, and I think
Yeah.
our previous dog Sparky did the same thing, where they're like just right next to the door.
Yeah.
Mikey, I don't know if it's kind of like a sign of like a dog who's maybe felt abandoned before, because since we've had Mike since he was 9 months old, he just sleeps wherever he's sleeping.
Yeah,
and then
He knows you're coming back.
but he's not in front of the door. And even like sometimes I like to just sit out in the front for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, and Dewey's in front of the door. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, like you could probably hear me or something.
Hamilton now he primarily goes on the couch or a couple chairs that he enjoys. So he he definitely just sleeps all day.
So that I was gonna ask you next,
Yeah.
if you think he felt at home right away. But
I think pretty quick.
'cause
But there were certain things that I don't know if he trusted the whole situation yet. Like I think he knew this room is where I can go and I'm allowed to jump on this and I shouldn't jump on that and like stuff like that. But I don't know if he was entirely trusting of the situation. Like, are these people going to come back, or or like, am I going to get fed on time? Things like that. I
yeah.
don't know if he was entirely trusting of that yet. Now, there have been times that we had to push his, just because our work schedules changed, so we had to slowly push his dinner time about an hour later than normal, and it actually wasn't that hard at all, because at that point he knew, like, you'll feed me, I know you will, so I'm not going to freak out that it's later, because I know that eventually you will feed me, it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Do you know about? I mean, you've been here while Dewey's gotten fed, right?
Oh man,
Dewey becomes a
it's a frenzy.
different animal. Like when it's around dinner time, is he gets so eager for dinner. So it's like, I mean, dogs are. Animals understand time. Like,
Yeah.
the weirdest thing is the time change, where we moved. What was it? We moved. You moved an hour back. Was it when you moved? No, when we moved an hour forward. So I was like, "There's no way he's gonna know," and he knew. Like,
It's wild.
it was like,
Yeah, it's really Hamilton's pretty good, but once you touch his bowl, like you pick it up, then he's like, "Oh boy, that means you're filling that bowl." So
Yeah.
then he starts to freak out and jump, and he jumps so high. He jumps like up to his nose gets almost to my chest when
Wow.
he jumps.
yeah, it's
So he enjoys his food, but for the
Like-
most part, he
sometimes-
trusts us to get it done.
Sometimes I kind of like I view this in different ways, but I've thought about this before, where it's like, sorry, Mike's just kind of breathing heavily in a funny way.
The tennis ball situation was very intense.
But like, you come home from work, maybe there's something you really want to do when you get home, whatever, you get excited. Dogs have like, but we have chores, we have all these other things. Dogs have like very few things that they actually like are looking forward to, like going for a walk and eating dinner. Those are like the top two
Their
things.
to-do list is
And
small.
so it's like that's where I imagine their adrenaline and everything is going. So it's always like the dog, the dog's jumping really hard and going crazy is always so fascinating.
We
to
always
me.
do one last walk for him to poop, because he doesn't poop in the backyard for some reason. He'll pee in the backyard all day long, but he does not poop unless it's in a walk. So we'll do one last walk before bed, and sometimes that last walk can be 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Okay.
And we can be very tired. He is still a maniac on these walks. He's so excited to walk, and I think it's exactly that reason. It's like, this is one of the only few things he does, and he really enjoys it. So it's like every chance, no matter how late, he is thrilled.
Is it like does he kind of like lose some energy, but then it's like he perks back up when you grab the leash or whatever?
Pretty much, yeah. The second you touch
Okay.
that leash, or what it's really is, the second you get your keys,
Oh, because he can
hear the jangle, and then he's like, it's time to go. Which then, like, when you're just leaving the house to go to work, then you have to be like, sorry, dude, this is not actually a walk, walk situation.
Oh, yeah. For us, we keep the leashes in a closet, and the closet has a very distinct sound when you open it. So Dewey starts going ballistic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, because it's funny, like sometimes his back legs kind of like give out a little bit, just randomly throughout the house. But then it's like, you're amazed what he can do.
Totally.
Well, it's the thing he wants.
Yeah.
So, how long have you had Hamilton now?
So now it is, it was April. I believe it was April. Was it It was the first of a month. I know that. And I was off. I was between rehearsals. When did I start rehearsals for this show? June. So yes, it was the 1st of April was when we took him home, or maybe the 2nd, but it was the beginning of April.
How lame would it be if you're like, we're taking him, and you take him, you drive out the parking lot, you come back in, April
Fools, haha. You should have seen this coming when we filled out the form.
April Fool's joke.
But yeah, so the beginning of April. So what is that? April, June, July. We're into August, so coming up on like 4 months.
And so, how long did it take for you? You know, he seemed kind of affected by this. How long did it take him to kind of seem like a normal, happy dog? Like, I don't remember how long you've had him when I met him, but he seemed
like a month.
And he seemed
just about
like
a
normal dog.
Yeah, he adapted really quick. I think we had a lot of interesting challenges as first-time adult owners of dogs. So, like, I grew up with dogs that my parents primarily took care of. Like, I did feeding and walks, but like, I didn't pay any veterinary bills. I also, I was the one who was like, hey, I think he's walking funny. And they would go and take him to the vet and find out what's actually going on. Like, I would never actually know what's happening, you know? So we had a lot of adjustments to make on our side of things in terms of all that stuff. Because now, I mean, even now at 4 months, if he breathes funny for a while, we're like, what is going on? Do we have to take him to the vet? We should take him to the vet because he's breathing funny. And it's really, he had like the equivalent of a hairball, right? But like, I notice so much more now because we are the ones responsible. So that was actually a big adjustment. Like, probably for the first month, I slept really poorly because I was just not used to, this other entity in the bed. I was worried I might kick him in the head.
Yeah.
I was always worried, did he wake up and have to go out? And I couldn't let him out, so he peed on the floor. Like, the first month, I was like not sleeping well and factoring him into our schedule in terms of like who wakes up and walks him, when do walks happen, both of us can't make it home, who's going to feed him, all these things. I was like, oh my gosh, taking him to the vet, scheduling vet appointments, the difference between a combo heartworm and flea pill and 2 separate pills. And when you give, like, these were all things that I was like, oh yeah, this is what this is about.
And then you're like, oh, I'll look it up on the internet, and you have that same thing that people run into with like WebMD or whatever, where it's
it's everything.
You're like, my head hurts, and it's like, you have pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, it looks like you're going to die. Yeah.
What?
And so it was like, hey, dog owners, what does this mean? And it's like, well, it could mean that your dog scratched himself a little too hard, and that's fine. Or it could mean that these red lines are some kind of poison that's going into your dog's heart. Like,
it means your dog is actually an alien, and it's like Men in Black.
Yeah,
like, it's like, what? Like,
yeah. So it's been a wild ride for us, and like, luckily he's been a super chill dog. So like, we had a situation very, like, probably in his second month of us having him, we had 2 rats in our house. And so it's like we had to deal with these rats, which then meant building in an entirely different schedule to the nighttime, where it's like we walk Hamilton, and then someone has to lock him in the room while we set rat traps, and then someone has to make sure he never leaves that room until the next day when I can clear the rat traps before I wake him up. It was like this. And then we had like a small flea infestation. So we had like a flea thing. Okay, put him in that room while we clean this, give him a bath, give him, like, we had all these things, like a ropes course very early on. All of which he has been like, all right, do what you need to do, you know? And like, luckily Ronit is also very good at, she's a phenomenal researcher. So like, even finding which vet to go to, she was like, here's what's in town and here's what people say about them and like here's when I can schedule an appointment. Like she's a phenomenal researcher and super knowledgeable about how to handle these things. So between the two of us, we've gotten him and ourselves pretty well acclimated.
Yeah, well, it sounds like everything has gone, for the most part, pretty smooth, and it seems like you guys like made the right decision.
Totally.
I think I forgot to ask you, was there like any particular reason that you wanted a dog? Or you're just like, other than that you like dogs?
I've just always been a dog person.
Okay.
Yeah. I've just, because we grew up with dogs. I like cats as well, but I think there's just a wider variety of cat that you get. Like, there's a wider variety of, like, this cat doesn't care, or this cat really likes you, or, like, what have you. And for Roni, like, her cat allergy is way higher than her dog allergy.
Okay.
So I've just always wanted a dog. I enjoy dogs. I'm definitely a dog enthusiast.
Cool. Well, I'm glad that everything is working out with Hamilton.
Yeah.
It seems great, especially as the older dog. Because even if, like, let's just say in a scenario that you could have had, like, a younger dog, not everyone wants that. So you being able to take on an older dog is great and helpful.
Yeah. Well, and it was a risk too. I mean, because you don't know. This dog has stuff that, like, habits that you're probably not going to be able to break. You might be able to adjust, but, like, you don't know really what kind of dog you're going to get. And I think we lucked out in Hamilton, who's just chilled out. Like, we've had to have him in a cone recently because of this flea thing, and he really, like, he does not struggle when you deal with this cone. And once it's on, he's like, all right, fine, this is my life now. Like, we lucked out with a guy who's very amiable.
Well, that's awesome, and I'm glad to hear everything is, for the most part, running smooth.
Totally.
And I'm glad I could finally get you on the show.
I'm glad I could finally be here.
You are one of the biggest
this is huge
listeners, supporters.
I'm super excited.
So it was great having you on, and thank you for being on. Is there anything you kind of want to, like, plug? I know, again, I'm going to say it again. It's not, like, the best show for that. Like,
yeah. Can I just tell one funny Hamilton story?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Definitely. I forgot to ask.
Oh, it's all right.
Yeah.
This is just, like, because again, listening to the show, I know, like, have one good story in your pocket. And I've got one where he's great with other people's food, like we found. Like, we set our own food out on the table, and he'll maybe sniff it, but even if we leave the room, he won't try and eat it. He's like remarkably good with food. But we have a housemate, and there was one night that Ronit and I were going to a play. A friend of ours it was their opening night, so we were going to this play, and there was going to be an after party. And our housemate was like, "I'll watch Hamilton the whole evening. It's all good." So we get home at probably about midnight, and Hamilton is like running back and forth up the hallway. He's like freaking out, more so than usual when we get home. We're like, what is going on? And our housemate told us that she had a McDonald's burger, and she put it on her bed, and it was wrapped. And then she went to the bathroom and came back. And in the time that she went to the bathroom and came back, Hamilton unwrapped the burger. Unwrapped. Didn't eat the paper. He unwrapped it, ate the whole thing, this little guy, this little chihuahua, except he picked out the pickles.
What? Dude, okay. I mean, since he unwrapped it, I'm not too surprised about the pickles, but that's great. Like, oh man, that's wonderful. Like, I mean, it's like one of those things where it's like you're worried and maybe you're mad, but it's like, I just gotta give you props.
That's such a remarkable aspect of the story that he also was like, oh, but no, I don't eat that. But then because, like, McDonald's burgers, like, the ketchup is so sugary and stuff like that, then it's a burger that's bigger than his head.
Yeah.
He was like freaking out all night. He was on like a sugar high, and then his poops were really weird for a few days. But it was just so fun.
I mean, if it's a quarter pounder, that's a high percentage of his body weight.
Yeah. And at the end of the night, when he's already eaten his breakfast and dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the fact that he picked
was
around
he okay,
the
though?
pickles.
Like, after that?
Ended up, yeah. I mean, he had like 2 days of like really harsh poops.
Okay.
But afterwards, he was fine. We started feeding him pumpkin with each meal, a little scoop of pumpkin, because I say that it helps digestion.
Is that with just dogs or anyone?
That's what we learned with just dogs for the most part.
Oh, okay.
But especially when we were transitioning food, because he was having like allergies to his current food, and so and you can't switch food like immediately, so you have to kind of wean him off.
If you want the runs,
right? If you just want exactly. So over the course of the transition, we gave him pumpkin with every a little scoop, like a spoon of pumpkin with every meal, and it helped a great deal. But we did not know about the pumpkin trick when he ate that whole burger.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's the perfect story to end the show and to just have on the show.
Totally.
Perfect. So do you want to share like your Twitter or Instagram? On Instagram, you've been posting.
Oh, I do post a lot about Hamilton on Instagram.
Yeah.
So my Instagram is at Max doesn't have IG.
But you do now.
But I do. It was a long running joke of how I never had one, and now I do.
Cool.
So yeah, check that out. There's lots of pictures of Hamilton. There's like I think now we're up to 3 or 4 different side-by-side baby deer or Hamiltons as well.
Do you take pictures and then you look for a baby deer equivalent?
No, I look for the baby deer first.
Oh.
I look for the baby deer first, and then I go, I could probably get Hamilton into an equivalent pose.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you can find me on social media at my name, at Ilya Alexeyev. You can find this show on a plethora of platforms. I think it's on all of them that I can think of. It's not on Dogster. Sorry.
What's Dogster?
It was like I don't know if it was a social media site for dog, but it was like MySpace era. I don't know what it was. Was it called Dogster? Or am I thinking Friendster? I'm pretty sure there was a dog
I'm
one.
sure there would have been, yeah.
I'm sure there was a Dogster. If not, I'm making it up. But this show is available on basically every single platform. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. I'm glad to get it on there finally. It posts on YouTube. And if you have some... I know like some people use different Android apps, and it's available through there. If you listen to this show, please rate it on a platform that has it. That will help greatly for other people to discover the show. So please give us good reviews, or any review to start. But hopefully it's good. There's an Instagram that I need to use more, and a Twitter account, and Facebook at The Good Boy Pod. You can like those, follow those, do all that fun stuff. I'll continue to try to post good pictures there. And yeah, share the show with your friends. It's a fun, easy, delightful time. Thank you, Max, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I just want to say really quick, I'm glad you were able to get a dog from like the Humane Society and stuff, because like I know Jack got his from like a breeder, but there's a lot of dogs who available there, so it's like, hey, get one there. Sometimes they're free. We got Dewey for free.
Wow.
Wow. I don't know if that's a good deal. But, no.
Yeah.
We got
the Humane Society does a great job. And the one in Milpitas is remarkable. They were extremely kind to us. They got remodeled recently as well.
We went
so
there.
It looks like a resort. They got a dog park that's open to the public too.
Before we got Dewey.
Yeah.
And even some of the sites have live webcams. Like the Peninsula one.
Interesting.
Has one. They have like a turf indoor area. Like there's not always dogs there, but like I was thinking like they need to hop on Twitch. These places need to hop on Twitch.
Doggy Twitch would be huge.
I'm sure some people have done it, but that's my idea. Feel free to take it.
Just make sure you tag the Good Boy Pod at it.
Tag us on there. But thanks for listening, and keep petting those dogs.